This was the Associated Press headline on November the 13th, 1959. Dateline Berlin. East Germans jail buyers of blue jeans. The East German communists have jailed a teenager for 2 months because he bought blue jeans in West Berlin. The judge told the 18-year-old that the sentence would, quote, serve as a warning to certain young people who ardently want blue jeans or rock and roll, end quote. Throughout the Cold War, blue jeans, and in particular Levi's blue jeans, were a coveted and at times forbidden item in the Soviet Union. But Soviet teens demanded Levi's, so much so that Levi's jeans started getting smuggled into the Soviet Union like narcotics. They were sold for outrageous prices. Now, to stop the smuggling, the East German government first tried to manufacture their own knockoffs. That didn't work. Then the government bulk purchased almost 800,000 pairs of Levi's jeans and had them literally airlifted from the United States so that they could start distributing them right away. Well, today, once again, in 2022, Levi's jeans have halted their sales in Russia, joining a growing chorus of companies. Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Universal, Paramount, all stopping film releases in Russia. Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, HP, and Intel all stopping new sales. Netflix has pulled out. TikTok won't allow new posts by Russian users. Flying out of Russia is nearly impossible now, as is buying anything with major credit cards like Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. All of which, in addition to punishing Western sanctions, takes a toll. Try taking a Disney movie away from a kid or an iPhone away from a teenager. In addition to a massive ground stop on Western goods and services, the Russian economy is showing real strain. Russian interest rates are now 20%. The ruble worth less than a penny. Massive inflation. Russian state media is doing its best to put a positive spin on this invasion of Ukraine, except you can't call it an invasion in Russia. It's called a special military operation. But even Russian citizens who are fully bought into the state-sponsored narrative are going to have trouble squaring up what that means and why they can't use their MasterCard anymore and why they're running out of food at shops and why their money's worth nothing if this is just a special military operation in Ukraine. A large section of the Russian population is also old enough to remember the Cold War and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and what both of those things did to their economy and how it all led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. We've already seen more than 13,000 anti-war protesters arrested across Russia. That unrest seems to be building despite the massive increased risk associated with protesting because of a new law that's been put into place. Is the broader Russian population, including many that support Putin, are they actually going to accept a costly war of choice against a neighbor and the resulting economic deprivation? Or is it possible that at some point Vladimir Putin and the Russian government could lose control of the Russian people? Joining us now, Ian Bremmer, president of the Eurasia Group, a leading global political risk research and consulting firm. Ian, thank you for being here. You have studied this more than most. Let's just talk about this. Let's say you can't get the real information. You're in Russia, and for whatever reason, everything you read follows the official line that this is a strategic operation in Ukraine. It's not a war. It's not an invasion. But suddenly your credit cards don't work and you can't buy stuff and you can't use stuff and you can't see stuff and things aren't available on the shelves and your interest rates are 20% and your money's not worth anything. At some point, people are going to say, this official storyline doesn't jive with my life.
Some people are, Ali, but most people are not. Some people are going to be primarily young, educated, literate, and online, at least previously online, given how much is being shut down right now by Russia in major cities. But the majority of the population is overwhelmingly fed information through state media. That's television, it's newspapers, it's not digital. And the level of support for Putin has historically been exceptionally strong among this group and is going to continue to be. I mean, if you think that the United States is incredibly divided and that people only follow news and cable and social media that they agree with, that is literally exponentially less than what you're experiencing in Russia right now. And we have to be aware of that, even as the Russian economy starts to crater, which it will do in spectacular fashion in the coming days.
But the Russian economy cratering, and some of that was in part due to how much money that the USSR was spending in Afghanistan and the body bags and the people coming back dead. But a lot of it was the economy. It was how bad things were for the Russian people, which prompted them to throw off their systems, their political systems back then. Why wouldn't the same thing happen now when people are frustrated that 30 years of economic and to some degree political gains seem to be evaporating in front of their eyes?
Because a lot of the reasons that Russians believe, again, Putin's supporting Russians, which is not the whole population, but a solid 60 to 70%, the reason why they believe the country has fallen into disarray, they don't blame Putin. They blame things like shock therapy. They blame NATO enlargement. They blame the West. And so when they hear from the Kremlin that the reason that the Russian economy is cratering is because of a war that the Ukrainians have started, or special military operations that are happening because the Russians were about to launch a war, or because they were committing genocide against Russians in the occupied territories, absolutely verifiably false, but completely what the Kremlin narrative has been now for months across Russia. They're going to buy it. I mean, come on. We've got still a strong majority in the United States of people that voted for Trump that believe that the election was fake. And in fact, a strong minority that believe that he should be returned to power immediately through violence if necessary. That's the United States. That's a wealthy, comparatively educated country. In Russia, Ali, this is vastly more dysfunctional. And you just have to appreciate that Putin does have the capacity to drive that narrative, even in the case of what's going to be a much worse economic collapse than what anyone in the United States has been experiencing for really a century.
What's the blowback on the rest of the world? We've already seen oil prices topping $125 a barrel. There are a whole bunch of people tweeting me today that they have filled up for more than $4 a gallon. We are approaching some of the highest prices for oil and gasoline that we've seen in a while. That's going to happen all over the world. What else happens if this continues?
It's probably about a 1% contraction in global GDP that we'll experience in the United States and in Europe. It's a lot more persistent inflation. It's supply chains being more severed and more challenging, so a lot longer time for you to get whatever it is you're trying to order. But that's really not the suffering. The suffering are the poorest. And it's a combination of, I mean, we've seen about 60 million people die of starvation in the last 12 months around the world, which is higher in the pandemic than it was before the pandemic. That's going to get a hell of a lot worse. Ali, you've just had the largest grain producer in the world invade the fifth largest grain producer in the world. And this is going to cause enormous challenges for the poorest people in the world who already don't get enough to eat. It's sub-Saharan Africa, it's Yemen, it's Afghanistan. Also emerging markets that are seriously indebted and don't have access to credit are going to be in much more trouble here. The potential for a financial crisis in Turkey, for example, a lot of other medium income emerging markets that have lived through 2 years of pandemic but have nowhere near the capacity to make their middle classes whole the way the Americans or the Europeans have through the pandemic, they're going to get smashed right now. So it's really global inequality. The last 40 years, globalization has driven the emergence of a global middle class. The pandemic, and now even worse, this Russia-Ukraine crisis, is going to force all of those people around the world to take it on the chin.